the closest you get to any education is, talking about periods in like that hush-hush tone. Sex is anything and everything that you want it to be.
Yeah.
So virginity is just a social construct. When you're having any form of sex, orgasm is the end goal.
Yeah.
No, it shouldn't be, and it's not.
Hello and welcome. You're watching HerZindagi's podcast series Shaktirupen Sanstita. Today we're here with Sachee Malhotra. She's the founder of a new age sexual wellness brand, That Sassy Thing. Let's find out more from her about what sexual health today in India looks like. Welcome to the podcast, Sachee.
Thanks so much, Rupsha. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, so to start off, I want to know why build a sexual wellness brand?
Yeah, I think that's a very packed question. I'd like to unpack that in different ways. That sassy thing comes from a very personal space, personal journey that I've had as well. With respect to my own health, be it physically, mentally, all of it kind of coming together. I'll touch upon this a little bit. When I was at the age of 15 years, I was diagnosed with a condition called PCOS, which is a hormonal condition, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And because of that, I went through a lot of changes in my body. I was big, I had excessive body hair, including facial hair as well. And because of that, I was bullied in high school, and I would say the bullying also continued at home as well. Uh, you know, uh, a lot of times, I would say the conversations would mostly revolve around relatives giving you gyan, and a lot of doctors in your family also telling you things like get your hair removal treatment done. So I actually underwent a lot of painful hair removal treatments as well, where I would literally cry for 2 hours, get all that painful hair removal done, and then that also translated to how it impacted my mental health.
Yeah,
Now,
huge body image issues that create, right?
absolutely,
When
yes.
that happens at such an early age.
100%, yeah. And in your formative years as well,
Yeah.
right? When you're literally forming all these ideas about your body,
Yeah.
how that's linked to your identity
Yeah.
as well, right? So I think all of that stress that, how do I say? I think like the mental health challenges that I kind of faced, there were no conversations around that, and
Yeah.
how those body image issues lead to lack of self confidence. They
Yeah.
lead to, I think they also like permeate into your personal relationships as well.
Of course,
So I
of
remember
course.
for me it was a lot like, a lot of my friends, for example, dating through college, and me being conscious about who will find me attractive, even,
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And then I think talking about that, even the first time when I actually like had an intimate experience, it was so awkward and so overwhelming for me, because I had all these messed up notions about how I looked,
Yeah. Yeah.
about
We're
my
so
body.
conscious.
So very conscious, yeah.
Yeah.
And that really impacted my relationship, my experiences also.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
what I realized was that yes, there's a lack of conversation, at school, at home, lack of sensitization also.
Yeah. General lack of awareness. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And also lack of representation in media and
Absolutely,
pop
I
culture.
completely agree.
Yeah,
Like what
yeah.
we've seen growing up in terms of what a attractive woman looks like
Yeah.
is really messed up.
Right, absolutely. And then also like when you look at sex overall as well, when it comes to the media representation as well.
Correct.
I think what you learn through pop culture,
Or worse, what you learn through pornography.
yes, mainstream pornography as well.
Yeah.
It's very different from what reality is like.
Absolutely.
So, you have this conundrum and you have like this expectation,
Yeah.
but reality is totally different.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's something that we identified early on, this that there is this gap that exists, in terms of education also, which is really important and has to be bridged.
Right.
From, I would say, why a sexual wellness brand, and why talk about sexual health also. Personally, I had these experiences, where when it comes to a product also, using mass market lubricants was really, really bad. So when you look at most flavored lubes which
Yeah,
existed
yeah.
in the market back then, before we had launched as well in Jan 2021, those lubricants have added sugars, flavors.
Yeah, which cause a lot of these yeast infections.
Yes, and
etc.
I personally had one as well, and I think the experience for my partner was also similar, where you literally feel like the need to take a shower to get all that strawberry and that gunk off of you in
Yeah,
a way,
yeah.
which was really bad. So I think the whole experience of buying any sexual wellness product right from when you're buying it, the shame and judgment that
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
met with, that's
yeah.
one. Then when you're using it, to the post usage experience
Which is
as
also
well.
horrible.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's something that we realized and really wanted to change, from a product standpoint. And culturally, from an education standpoint, we realized that for us, and I think we had like a lot of interviews with people, with friends, with colleagues, with a lot of relatives as well, to understand if they got any sex ed. And no one really got any sex ed, right?
Totally
Like,
didn't get any.
yeah, in
We
school, at
ventured
home.
into, like, they taught us so much in school,
Yeah,
in terms of like all the mathematics and the algebra.
yeah,
And I don't know why people thought that these kids are not going to have sex. Like, you're
yeah,
going to have sex, you're going to
yeah,
grow up, and you're going to,
yeah.
let's just address the elephant in the room. And we're not equipped with anything. And the most we're told is like, don't get pregnant,
Yeah.
which is so fear based
Yeah.
in its approach, which instills that sort of shame even more, that oh my god, let's be afraid of this thing.
Yeah.
And then you are in a room with someone you're attracted to, and you have no idea what is to be done, how to remain safe, how to enjoy it, what you enjoy, because nothing has ever been told to you.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. And I think I remember, like, I think for me it was like class 8th, girls in one room, boys in one room,
That's the
the
even,
binary,
yeah, nobody knows what even a body part is
Yeah,
called.
exactly.
Yeah.
And like I think the closest you get to any education is, talking about periods in like that hush hush tone
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
the
That too, girls get it in more detail than boys do. So
right.
boys are like, okay, this is just a thing that happens to women.
Right, right. And then, they're just like curious about, okay, what were, you being told, and,
Yeah,
there are
yeah,
those
yeah.
jokes and giggles, which is
Yeah, yeah.
understandable. But again, like, I think there's no really holistic form of education in that sense, right? And I think you touched upon a very important topic. What happens to just, I would say, like, not talking just about, sex, but like what all comes along with it. That's
Yeah,
such
yeah.
a yeah, that there's like a range of different things, right? So talking about consent, talking about comfort, talking about safety,
Yeah.
I think like
Talking about the fact that there is no definition or rule book or
yeah,
codified manual that this is what you have to do, this is what you should do,
right,
or this is what it should look like,
right,
right? Like,
right,
intimacy is what you make of it.
yeah,
Intimacy should be
yeah,
what is intimacy to you, which should be
right,
defined just by individuals themselves and not by a script. But we
absolutely.
all grew up with a script.
100%. I think like that is what messes you up, right? Like, and again, I think you don't know any of that. Then what do? You go to like a friend, you ask them questions,
Yeah.
or you just Google stuff, and
Yeah.
obviously there's plethora of like misinformation that exists
Absolutely. Yeah.
on the internet as well. Or you go to that misinformed cousin of yours, and
Yeah, who's
they'll
also learned from the most dubious sources.
right, absolutely,
None of that is like experts or professionals or like a verified kind of information source. It's
yeah,
still people who've learned off pornography, for all we know.
yes,
Who will tell
absolutely,
you, oh, this is what it should be, like this is what you
right,
should do.
right,
And that
yeah.
just messes up. I think it messes up at a very core level, it messes your confidence up.
Very rightly put, yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
I think absolutely right. And when it comes to, let's say, most mainstream pornography, it is from a male gaze, right?
Yeah, so
And I
much of
think
it. It's so sexualized.
it is hypersexualized, right? And I think that is something that you think is normal, and that's
Yeah.
normalized in your head as
Everything
well.
has no hair.
Yeah,
Everything is pristine and proper.
Yeah.
There is no fat
yeah,
anywhere.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I think that is something that we
And it
wanted
goes
to,
on for like 2
right,
hours.
yeah. It's never ending. It's like, you just keep at it and it
Yeah,
doesn't end.
yeah.
But obviously that's not how it is in reality for a lot of people,
Yeah,
right? And
neither
as
is it that athletic. It's
yeah.
not an Olympic competition.
Oh, no way, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're not always in the mood to, just like get down and,
Yeah,
get at
yeah.
it. So I think there are so many missing pieces in that sense as well. What happened to protection, for example, right? Like, where is
Correct,
that?
correct.
Or, like how different people experience pleasure
Yeah.
that might not always end in an orgasm.
Yeah.
And a lot of people might not experience orgasm also, or they
Yeah.
might not know what orgasm is to begin with,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And data also says that 7 out of 10 women don't, experience an orgasm through penetration, but need clitoral stimulation.
Absolutely.
Now that is something that's not, a
There.
part of any education in that
Representation. Yeah,
sense
yeah, yeah.
also, right? So I think there are so many of those things. And then let's talk about, I would say, sexual health. Let's talk about different conditions as well. Let's say
Vaginismus,
vaginismus,
yeah.
right? So there's no conversation around that also. So I
Yeah.
think overall there is no comprehensive holistic resource as well, and that's something that we are also building. I think we
Yeah.
were building like right
Yeah.
from get go when we launched that Sassy Thing. So we are also a brand that is sex ed first
Yeah.
in that sense also, because we've identified now all these challenges,
The
all these
gaps.
problems and gaps that do exist. So we launched India's first online sex ed masterclasses. Now these are self-paced, self-taught, online courses that you can take. We've actually collaborated with like the best sexuality educators in the country to
Nice.
have these curated, I would say,
Modules?
yeah, modules
Yeah.
on different topics. So, there's one masterclass which is basically on the 101 on, gender and sexuality. So it talks about everything right from what are different pronouns, what happens if you actually address someone with the wrong pronoun, how do
Yeah.
you really,
Yeah.
address that situation as well.
Yeah.
To figuring out your gender, your sexuality, things like that as well.
Yeah.
What is the difference between the two also? So I
Yeah.
think it starts from that very basic level, that education that we don't really get, and which really helps us in navigating the world inside us and around us as well,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so that's one. Then we also have another masterclass which is on the basics of sex ed. So it talks about everything right from, STI prevention to, using protection, to talking about pleasure and, like sex ed from a pleasure centric approach in that sense as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Then we also launched another masterclass which is on intimacy after childbirth. So we collaborated with the sexuality educator Swati Jagdish, who goes by Maya Zamma as well. So she's a birthing consultant and lactation
Yeah.
consultant also, and she has expertise in this. So our goal has always been to, collaborate and work with credible educators who
Yeah.
have this knowledge and, bring this to
Yeah.
more and more people in that
Yeah. And
sense.
from a very progressive lens.
Right, right. And I think from a lens where we are covering different age groups as well. So, for example, mothers are not considered sexual beings, right? So,
Correct.
that's something
Yeah.
that we want to
It
address.
gets worse with age.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think like the whole birth giving process, what is it like for the birth giver, their partner, how it affects their intimacy as well.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
do they go on that journey, and what does that look like? Then we recently launched one more masterclass on healing from sexual trauma.
Yeah.
Because that is something that's also not talked about
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely. And I think a lot of the unfortunate sexual experiences which leave behind a very nasty mark happened in childhood, and then people start
Absolutely.
realizing that it
Yeah.
was a problematic episode much later on in their lives. They didn't even probably know that it was a problem when it happened to them.
Right.
And
And statistically, it happens at home.
yeah,
more
than
so as
most
well.
of
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And then it affects every future intimate situation, and not most of us don't know what to do, how to get better, how to heal from it, what are the resources to seek out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think like if you go a few steps back, like having the right vocabulary also, and
Correct,
as you
correct.
rightly said,
Yeah.
right, even understanding that, hey, this is something that happened to me, and really understanding what it meant and
Yeah.
how it impacts you in different
different
ways as
ways,
well.
yeah.
So that's something that we are doing, in
Yeah.
terms of sex ed very actively. Yeah.
So statistically, there is research that says that 70% of women do not orgasm through penetrative sex, which is sort of known as sex. Everything else is what happens before, after.
Yeah.
But sex, it has to be penis and vagina penetrative sex, which is a very common, I would say, misconception, because it eliminates the asexual experience of queer people. It eliminates people who probably just enjoy foreplay and don't enjoy penetration. And I know that your brand is doing a lot of work in that area. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sex is anything and everything that you want it to be. So, kissing can be sex, cuddling can be sex, holding hands or like some other form of intimacy that you enjoy,
Yeah.
with the person that you're with. You both enjoy, that can be sex. So, I think it's very, I would say, expansive in that sense and very holistic in that sense. And that's something that we do, I would say, on a regular, having those conversations as well. And absolutely right. I think women have been conditioned in a way, because we were talking about, how 7 out of 10 women don't experience, orgasm through penetration and need some form of clitoral stimulation as well. I think it goes to, or like it extends to this much larger cultural conversation and conditioning as well, where number one, we as women are not taught to, I would say, like, have agency over our bodies in any way. And I think I was talking a little bit about this earlier as well, right? Like, it starts from childhood. So I would talk about my personal experiences, because I know a lot of these are shared experiences of millions of women across. Right from, let's say, I remember when I was in, I think, 8th standard, because I started getting my upper lip and, like, a lot of hair all over the body. It was about waxing karao, ye theek cheez nahi hai, you shouldn't look like this. Then when it came to the facial hair, it was like, hi bechari, because there is this idea of like what a woman should be like, right? So right now we are on the looks aspect of it, but it translates into everything that's expected of a woman.
You're also the one who has to provide that sort of satisfaction
to everyone else, and their gaze basically. So I think in that sense there's no I would say there's no idea also that, okay, this is my choice, and what I do with my body hair, how I look, that's my choice completely. You don't have the agency over it in that sense. So I think it starts from there, where, like for me, when I'm talking about body hair, then the conversations were also about, let's say there's a group of relatives, they're looking over your plate, tum kya kha rahe ho, lose weight like this, PCOS hai, so that means polycystic ovarian syndrome, so that means weight loss karo, sab theek ho jayega. What is happening internally, no one really talks about in a way, right? Like hormones, their impact on your mental health as well. Then what you're going through as a teenager with respect to, all the other bullshit that's happening, and what you're being told, what you're being fed as well. I think fast forward to that, like, it is also about like what is expected of women as well, right? Like at home, it's about, women, let's say, pleasing all other people in the family,
Never.
You're supposed
they come
to
last. They eat
absolutely
last. Their
exactly
priorities come last.
Yes, 100%, right?
And that
like
trickles down to pleasure. You come after everything else.
Right,
your
absolutely.
pleasure is the last.
That's not even like, a thing that you think about consciously as well, right? So I think that's where the gap really is in that sense.
Sex is also seen as something that is for a lot of people, it's just something for reproduction.
Yes.
It's never seen as something that is just for pleasure.
Yeah, just for fun, or like something that gives you joy.
Yeah.
And also something that you can experience on your own. You don't always have to have someone else, right? So I think that conversation, that narrative was completely missing, I would say, from the mainstream conversation around sex. Obviously, it was, like not about other aspects of intimacy, but also from the aspect of women. The pleasure aspect, self-pleasure, has never been a part of the conversation.
Nobody knows what to do,
I think
how
10
to
years
do,
back.
or where anything is.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second thing, right, like, which is about that lack of education. We don't know enough about our bodies. How do we know, or how will we understand how to please them in the first place as well?
The funny thing about this is the clitoris is actually the only organ that is just for pleasure.
Yeah.
There is literally no other role that it serves, is what I read.
Yeah.
And which is incredible when you think about it, because we are designed to experience joy, we are designed to experience pleasure, and yet nobody's taught us how to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, like, this whole idea of, feeding the male gaze also, you see that, because I was saying that, I think that was the case also, let's say, 10 years back, when we were growing up. Mainstream, pornography is something that taught you that, okay, it is about how it ends. Let's talk about that. Like, it's about the man experiencing pleasure. Honestly, like, for a lack of a better term, coming triumphantly, and the woman is just there, and literally like an object, things are being done to, for a lack of a better term in that sense. So I think that whole narrative is something we wanted to flip. How that begins, because it's a very holistic thing, right? You can't see it in silos. You can't see your body, and like how you feel about your body differently from how you're experiencing intimacy also. It's all very,
together,
yeah, it comes together in that sense. So for us, the idea as a brand for that Sassy Thing has been to show representation. So, early on also when we had launched until date, we have a lot of illustrations of real women, for example.
Real
Real
bodies,
women,
yeah.
real bodies, with all the, I would say, stretch marks, cellulite, body hair, like different body shapes as well, different sizes, because that's what I did not see growing
Yeah,
up, right?
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
I really wished I saw that. And the idea always has been to have a safe space for people to, have these
Identify
conversations
with.
and also relate to. Yes,
Yeah, identify
exactly.
with. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's been really, important in that sense.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, when it comes to education leads to empowerment as well,
Yeah.
right? So for us, the goal has been to, empower women with the right knowledge, right tools, empower people of all genders in that
Yeah.
sense as well, to really take charge of their sexuality, to, know more about their bodies. And that's how you also, like, experience different, I would say, like, experience pleasure, for example,
Yeah,
in a way,
yeah,
when you know
yeah.
about it, when you learn more about
Yeah,
it.
and that makes every experience better for both people
Yeah.
involved, which
Yeah.
is, I think, the end goal. And I also want to ask you, you're a woman who's in the space which is dominated by men.
Yeah.
Like condom brands are mostly owned by men. Whatever traditional sexual wellness product brands, they're mostly owned by men. And in a society which frowns upon talking about these things openly, in a society where sex is very hush hush, brushed under the carpet, what kind of judgment do you receive, or what kind of, is it a welcoming space by all? Like the fact that, okay, you're a woman who's talking about this day in day out every day. What is it like for you?
Yeah, I think it has been an interesting journey that way, and obviously there have been challenges. Like, I think initially, I would say, when we were just about to launch, a little before that, when we were in the research, like, R&D phase, definitely, like, if you look at all spaces, let's say you take the manufacturing sector also, that's also mostly dominated by men only,
Yeah.
right? And a woman going up to them saying that, hey, I want to make a natural lube, which is basically for all genders, and
We'll be like,
keeping
"आप यहाँ क्या
vaginas
कर
in
रहे हो?"
mind. हाँ, ये क्या कर रहे हो आप, मतलब, आपको स्ट्रॉबेरी लुब्रिकेंट बनाना चाहिए, क्योंकि जब तक स्ट्रॉबेरी पूरे रूम में नहीं फैलेगी, मज़ा नहीं आएगा, मूड नहीं सेट होगा. Those are the kind of things that I was also kind of subjected to. But yes, there were bits where there were some manufacturers who were like, who didn't want to engage with me, for example, being a woman, wanted my husband or father on the call, would say such things that, आप
आपसे नहीं
बहुत सवाल
बात,
पूछते हो.
अच्छा आपसे
Things
बात
like
नहीं
that.
कर
Yeah,
सकते,
yeah.
हाँ.
Because we were also doing something that hadn't been done as
Yeah.
well. I think irrespective of the gender also in that case. But of course, I would say being a woman, adds that mix of people, having more questions, and, people not believing in you as much as well. And I think I kind of experienced that growing up also in some way. It's not always very conscious, but it's subconsciously, fed into you. So you would hear things like, बट ये कैसे करेगी तू, अपने आप कैसे रहेगी, ये कैसे करेगी, ये नहीं हो पाएगा, sort of a thing. So I think that gendered idea of, like,
Especially around a business, especially
yes,
around money,
yes,
especially around
absolutely,
owning.
around independence also,
Yeah.
around freedom as well.
Yeah.
Those conversations do happen, more so with women, sadly. So that has already been conditioned in your head, right? Plus, now obviously you're doing something which is obviously, like, out of the ordinary,
Yeah,
and not
yeah.
very common, not, all women don't run sexual wellness brands in
Yeah,
a way.
yeah.
So I think, yeah, definitely that was there. I remember from what came, like, the I would say reactions at home as well. So I think my mom was really, like, aghast in the beginning, where she was just like, but यही products क्यों, कोई और products क्यों नहीं कर लेते. Then I remember, like, there are nuances in a way, right? Like, so I remember a couple of months back, there was a cousin who was getting married, and I was like, हमारे products मुझे gift करने हैं इनको, and it's only relevant they're getting married. So obviously, like, intimacy, marriage already, kind of right fit that way.
Yeah.
And my mother was really concerned. She was like कि अगर in-laws ने खोल लिया उनके सामने अगर खुल गया तो क्या लगेगा? And I was just like, I don't care. Like I really
Yeah, they're
don't
getting
care.
married.
They shouldn't. Yeah. What do you
When
think?
are
Like
they-
they've not done stuff already in a way. This is
Yeah.
just taking it to the next level.
Yeah.
So
And I'm helping them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, to enjoy their marriage even more.
Yeah.
So I think those conversations have been there in every aspect where that oh my god bit does come into place. I think for me on the other side, like I've also had, and I want to like bring about this point also. I've had men who've been really supportive also. So I would say like my father has been really supportive, always seen the business as a business. So he's the first one who'll blast things on LinkedIn to his
Yeah.
thousands of people in
Yeah.
his network. If there's any like media
Highlights.
story,
Yeah,
any
yeah.
coverage, so this podcast also he's going to be the first one to share
Yeah.
with people in his network, then sending WhatsApp blasts to people,
Correct,
which is really nice and how it should be.
Yeah.
Similarly for my husband also, he's been really supportive and he's played a pivotal role in normalizing the idea for my parents also right from the get-go,
Yeah.
and basically I think for I would say generations, right, I think sex has been associated with sleaze.
Yeah.
That's something that we are trying to change and we are changing.
Either sleaze or shame.
Yeah, sleaze or shame.
Yeah.
And sleaze I'm talking about like from a brand standpoint.
Oh yeah,
Also
yeah,
the
yeah.
brands
All
that have
the
existed.
condom adverts will
Yeah.
have like a steamy, smoky.
Yeah, like a bikini clad
Yeah,
woman and
yeah.
there's chocolate or strawberry or something dripping on her in a way, right? Like
yeah.
that's
And
that's
again, so much for the male gaze.
Right.
Every product is so
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
for the male gaze.
Yeah, and that's something that our parents, grandparents, everyone have. That's what they've seen in a way, right?
Yeah.
So I think for them to also understand and imagine that hey, it's not supposed to be this way, and there's a better way to do this. I think it takes time.
Yeah.
Definitely, change takes a lot of time. Learning takes time as well. Unlearning takes even more time.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of work that has to be done, and we've been doing.
Yeah.
In changing mindsets in
Yeah.
that sense
Yeah.
as well. So
Yeah.
yes, there are people and there are like those bouts of judgment that come along, but there's also like so much encouragement, so much positivity
Keeps
that we
you
do
going.
see, which actually keeps us going. And I think on that positive note, I feel like one thing that really drives me is when people write to us. Like I remember like the other day there was a woman who wrote to us saying that she had never experienced an orgasm in like 15 years of her marriage until she actually used our products, and that's when she experienced her first orgasm, which
Wow.
was amazing, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so I think those are the driving factors, those are the moments that keep you going, and there are so many of those, and there are so many
Correct.
such people as well.
Yeah.
So hold on to those people, hold on to the people who cheer you on. Of course there will be naysayers in
Yeah.
any journey, there'll be people who'll
Yeah.
like judge you and all, but I think I've come to a point where like I keep
look past.
yeah, I just
Yeah.
like keep that guard up in that sense, and I focus on the positive.
Yeah. So, since you're in this space, I want to know from you, what do you think among the people who've told you, among the questions you get, feedback you get, what are the top 3 misconceptions about sex that still are prevalent?
I think one thing that came up like a lot in our research conversations with a lot of women was this idea that lube is not for me. Lube is for people who have a problem. It's for
Yeah.
women who are a certain age,
Yeah.
older,
Yeah.
mostly. So I think that has been one misconception. Lube is something that can literally enhance play for anyone and everyone,
Even
in that
solo,
sense.
right?
Even solo, yeah, absolutely. Solo or if you're with a partner.
Yeah.
So irrespective of the age, definitely it is something that can, like I would say make penetrative sex, I would say more comfortable,
Yeah.
more pleasurable also.
Enjoyable, yeah.
But way beyond that also. So, let's say if you're using a toy as well,
Yeah.
it's something that can enhance that and take that to the next level too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
lube is for everyone, and I think it's one of the most, underrated products in that sense as well. That's one. Secondly, the idea of virginity, like when you lose your virginity,
Yeah.
hell,
Yeah.
all hell breaks loose
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
So virginity is just a social construct.
Yeah.
It
We've
is,
been fed that narrative.
yeah, we've been fed that narrative that
Who do you lose your flower to?
yeah,
Oh my God, yeah.
exactly, yeah. So that is definitely a big myth. And then I think the
I
third,
think the hymen itself is a myth, is what I have been reading, that it's a stretchable
yeah,
sort of
yeah, and it can
membrane.
break, like let's say when you're exercising or
Horse riding, dancing,
cycling, anything.
cycling,
Yeah,
anything,
right,
and that breaking has no significance with virginity, and there's so
right.
much emphasis on your,
Yeah.
the suhagrat and the
Yes, and like being a virgin, when you're married and
being
things like
pure,
that.
which is
Yeah,
even
being
worse
being pure
because
and
there's no
pious.
such
Yeah,
marker for men.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And then again, like if you're not a virgin, that is equal to you being a slut, I guess,
yeah,
in a lot
yeah,
of ways, right?
yeah,
So I think that is like a very extreme way of looking at things and not, looking at it in a very uh, realistic and scientific way
yeah,
also in that
yeah,
sense as
yeah.
well. Um, Beyond that, I would say the third misconception that a lot of people have is around different sexual experiences. So I think this idea that when you're having any form of sex, orgasm is the end goal.
Yeah.
No, it shouldn't be, and it's not, because also, like, a lot of people don't experience orgasm as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's about understanding how all bodies are different and experience pleasure very differently as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So pleasure should
Is
be the end
is the end
goal
goal.
in that sense
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
and not always, like getting there and like experiencing an
Yeah. Yeah.
orgasm in that
Also, I think
sense.
when you make
And
it goal based,
yeah,
there's a constant pressure on every person's
absolutely.
head
Yes.
that okay, are we there yet? Are we
Yeah.
there yet? And you're
Yeah.
constantly thinking about that, which ruins
Right.
the
And
experience.
if it didn't happen, then oh my God, like, we're not meant to be, or,
Yeah, world's coming to an
yeah,
end.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Or worse, right? That if you don't orgasm, the sex is bad.
Yeah,
That's not the
yes.
case.
Yeah,
It can still
exactly.
be amazing.
Yeah,
And yeah.
right, absolutely. And like different people have different expectations also, and there are so many things that affect it as well, right? So
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
example, let's say if there's stress,
Correct.
that affects
So many
how
other
you are.
hormonal bodily changes.
Absolutely, right? Like, let's say, like, for me personally, vaginal dryness because of PCOS was, one of the symptoms as well. And that affects, or like having a, like low sex drive at times as well. So I think there are so many variants around it that need to be considered. And it's not just like a on and on switch ki ho
Switch.
gaya, nahi hua,
Yeah.
ho gaya, nahi hua. There are so many things, right? And it's also like different, I would say, experiences at different times in life
Correct.
also.
It's your mental space that
Yeah,
plays a
where you're
huge
at,
role.
in a way,
Yeah.
in that sense as
I had
well.
watched something where I remember they said that the brain is your biggest sexual organ.
Yeah.
Because that really determines
Yes,
how you're going to experience pleasure. And
absolutely.
intimacy is also so much about where you are with a partner in terms of your emotional space.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not just a physical thing where you
Yeah.
can just go at it and come
Yeah,
to
it
an
can't be
end.
just like wham bam done,
Yeah.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think one more thing that that just came to my mind was this idea that your first time is supposed to be a certain way. Oh my God, that's like that is rubbish, absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
Because I remember like how bad my first time was, where literally like it did not happen, nothing happened, not like
Yeah.
how it's shown in movies, media,
Yeah.
and I literally locked myself in a different room, talked to my friends, and I was like, I don't think we are meant to be, it did not happen
Yeah.
at all, and
Yeah.
I don't know, is there something wrong with me, things like that. So
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
just the first time is not what you've seen in movies, or not what you expect it's going to be.
Yeah.
It can be totally messed up, it can be
Awkward and
horrible, it
messy.
can be
Yeah.
very messy, awkward, it can be great also,
Yeah.
but it's not always going to be just this amazing thing
Yeah.
that they show you,
Yeah.
in
Also, it's the
movies.
first time for most people sort of feeling what sensations feel like in
Yeah.
that area. So that's
Yeah.
overwhelming in any
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. Yes, for a lot of
So
people it is. But yeah, there's no one definition of one,
unidirectional.
like I would say specific way of how it's going to be.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that I feel like for a lot of people, when they're actually like about to experience it for the first time, they should know this, because I think it's so important to like have your expectations right in
Set.
that
Yeah.
sense, and
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
have
Absolutely.
very high hopes in
Correct.
that sense
Correct.
also. Yeah.
I also want to know your brand is making some amazing sexual health products
Yeah.
from toys. You have clit suction toys. You have a massager. You have a pillow which sort of aids the experience. I want to know how the market has changed for these things. I don't know if there were a lot of conversations around these. Are these still shrouded in shame? Are they still looked at as, oh my God, she uses something like that? Is it okay? Is there like a sort of stigma? What is it like?
Right. So I think I would say 7 to 8 years back, definitely the conversations were not happening at a very, I would say, large scale and happening at scale in that sense. But that's changing now with, brands like ours that are leading this change, talking about it, bringing a lot of normalization. So I think normalization and education go hand in hand
Yeah.
for us in that sense
Yeah.
as well. And the idea of, using any pleasure product, that is something I feel like again, like that normalization bit kind of comes into as well, right? Because yes, there has been shame, there has been like judgment, but I think a lot of it is also internalized,
Yeah.
right? More
Yeah.
than thinking कि अच्छा वो मेरे बारे में क्या कहेंगी, पहले I think about कि मैं अपने बारे
I
में क्या
think
सोचती
also
हूँ.
between partners, there's the notion that can a toy replace a partner?
Right. Yeah.
Which is.
I think again the normalization, work kind of comes into play here. Yes, there are people who, and a lot of men would also think, that if my partner is bringing a toy into the bedroom, it means that I'm not
good
enough,
enough. Yeah,
right?
not
Like
good
I'm not enough and
Yeah.
I can't,
Satisfy her.
like, yeah, I would say make the person happy in
Yeah,
that sense
yeah.
as well. So definitely that notion is changing because for us, there are a lot of men who buy our products as
Yeah.
well. So, 40% of people buying our products are men buying it for their girlfriends, their wives, partners. So I think that yes, there are people who are threatened by, using toys, but I think that's changing culturally as
Because you
well.
do agree that toys only enhance and it cannot replace a human
Absolutely.
being, right?
No one can replace like, human touch, how that feels,
Yeah.
emotional intimacy
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
You can't replace how, holding someone's hand feels like, how that kiss feels like, those
Yeah,
little moments.
yeah.
So definitely they're not a means to, replace a person at all, cannot do that. But they're more so a tool to enhance the experience, enhance pleasure, enhance intimacy. And I think also a great way to really learn more about your own bodies and how you experience pleasure as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So I think it's important to kind of understand the difference, in that sense as well. And I think, sorry, you were also talking about the market. The market has definitely grown, and as we are seeing more and more people being open to the idea, I think we've been honestly like overwhelmed by the response that we've got. The market was always ready, I would say, in that sense.
You just
But
didn't have the products.
yeah, I think the products didn't exist. The cultural conversations around sex, the normalization, also the aspect that what we were talking about earlier, right? Like it doesn't have to be associated with sleaze, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea of it being something that's fun, something that's like a shared experience between two people, something that's so intimate and so personal, but at the same time, really enjoyable as well.
Yeah.
That whole idea coming into the place. Secondly, the idea of like really good looking products that exist, fun products that are functional but also discreet. So
Yeah.
for us, it's important that we keep in mind the cultural, sensibilities of our audiences in mind and launch products accordingly as well. So for example, if you were talking about our clitoris massager, the that's something that is so discreet that you can leave it outside and it blends into your your room in that sense. So it's basically designed to look like it can be anything,
Yeah, it's
in that
not.
sense as
Yeah,
well.
because traditionally we only knew of dildos or vibrators as
Yeah,
the only
and like
kind of
phallus
toys.
looking objects,
Yeah,
right,
phallus
in
looking
that sense.
objects,
So
yeah.
that's something that we don't want to do as a brand ever, in that sense. And really be very approachable, because the idea is to normalize, sexual wellness and the tools that come, as a part of it as well.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say? Do you have any sort of parting thoughts on where the sexual wellness journey is going for us as a society here on?
I would say definitely going in the right direction, because when we're talking about society, let's pick up like, popular culture. So I think there's so much OTT content also that is, going into normalizing female pleasure. Started with lust stories. You have,
Yeah,
movies
finally,
like,
yeah.
yeah. You have, movies like Thank You for Coming.
Yeah.
But also, I would say a movie like Oh My God 2 that just came out, right? Which talks about the importance of sex education.
Yeah,
So I think
yeah.
that's great in terms of educating the masses about it.
Correct.
And again, like not seeing it as something that's dirty, but something that can really empower you in making the right decisions, and how that needs to happen like at a school level, at home as well.
Yeah.
When people are growing up. So I think
Yeah.
as a society we are moving in the right direction, having those conversations. I would love to see a day when, few years down the line, it can become as normal as a dinner time conversation,
Yeah,
and it
like a
doesn't
dinner
have to
table
be, yeah, a
conversation,
dinner
yeah.
table conversation, and it doesn't have to be something that's, that you literally like sit down and talk about. It doesn't have to be a sit down, really. Like,
Yeah.
it can be something normal in every day. Let's say when you're literally watching that ad of like a sanitary pad on the TV, you don't have to change the channel in
Yeah,
that
or if you're
sense.
seeing like a steamy scene, you don't like skip it. You
Yeah,
don't,
yeah, and you don't make like a big deal out of it that,
Yeah.
like,
Oh my God, we
oh my God,
shouldn't.
yeah,
Yeah.
flipping channels in that sense.
Yeah.
So I think we are moving there. I think any kind of change on a societal level takes time.
Takes time.
We are in it for the long run, and, we are here to see that change at a very large scale as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing because there are a lot of other brands that have popped up in the space, since we launched as well. So I think collectively, I would say as a collective, we are all moving in that direction to educate people, to normalize the idea of
Yeah.
sexual wellness,
Yeah.
sexual
Yeah.
health.
And keep women at the forefront.
Yeah, and keep women at the forefront, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for
Cool.
joining us, Sachee.
Thank you.
This
Thanks
has
so
been
much.
great.
I love talking to you. Thank you. Thank you for being really amazing. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a lovely chat. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. You can also find the rest of the stories from Shaktirupen Samstita, the series, on HerZindagi.com.